Long Island medium Theresa Caputo finds herself in a new and terrifying situation. She comes into contact with a mysterious spirit who was the victim of a murder. Now that spirit wants to harm her family and specifically target Theresa's grandson. Theresa, who has always been in touch with spirits, now finds herself in a strange and dangerous situation where she must ensure the safety of her family. Theresa Caputo, the renowned Long Island medium, had always lived with a deep connection to the spirit world. Over the years, she had helped countless families find closure and peace, using her gift to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. However, nothing could have prepared her for the terror that would soon befall her own family. It started on a chilly autumn evening. Theresa was alone in her home, sitting in her living room, when she felt an unsettling chill sweep over her. The air grew thick, and she could feel the presence of a spirit nearby. But this one was different. It wasn't like the peaceful spirits she often encountered. This one was angry, restless, and filled with a thirst for vengeance. The spirit materialized before her, a woman disheveled and pale, with haunting eyes that seemed to pierce through Theresa's very soul. Theresa could hear whispers, words of pain, sorrow, and rage that filled the room. The woman's voice, raspy and filled with anguish, spoke clearly. "I was murdered, and now I seek justice." Theresa was no stranger to spirits seeking justice, but this one had an edge, a darker edge. "Who did this to you?" Theresa asked, trying to calm the spirit. But the response was chilling. "I don't care about justice. I care about vengeance." The room grew colder, and the spirit's intentions became clear. It was not seeking peace, it was seeking retribution. And its target was Theresa's family, specifically her precious grandson, who had just celebrated his 5th birthday. The spirit's rage was inexplicable, and its need to harm Theresa's loved ones felt like a primal force. Desperate, Theresa reached out to the spirit. "Please, you don't have to do this," she begged. "You don't need to hurt anyone." But the spirit was relentless. "Your family, my revenge is coming for them. You can't stop it." Theresa knew she had to act quickly. She couldn't let this malevolent force hurt her family, especially not her grandson. She began a series of intense rituals, calling on the spirits of her ancestors and the protective energies she had always relied on. As the night wore on, the spirit's presence only grew stronger, its malicious intentions weighing heavily on her heart. The next day, Theresa's family gathered at her home for a quiet family dinner. But even as they sat together, Theresa couldn't shake the feeling of dread. She had to protect them, but how? As the evening went on, the spirit's energy began to manifest in terrifying ways. Objects in the house began to move on their own, doors slammed shut with violent force, and eerie whispers echoed through the walls. Theresa's grandson, who had been playing in the living room, suddenly stopped, his eyes widening as he looked toward the corner of the room. Theresa followed his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see it too, the spirit, now fully materialized, glaring at her family with fury. However, Margaret sat in the front row of the small, warmly lit room, her hands trembling as she held a tissue. She had been skeptical about coming to see Theresa Caputo, but the grief of losing both her mother and brother to cancer had left her desperate for any kind of sign. Theresa walked into the room with her signature big hair and bright energy, immediately sensing the heavy emotions surrounding Margaret. She closed her eyes for a moment, then looked directly at her. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you," Theresa said softly. "Your mom and your brother are here. They're standing right behind you." Margaret gasped, her eyes filling with tears. "Your mom says you've been struggling. She says you sit by the window every night, holding that old sweater she used to wear. She wants you to know she sees you, and she's wrapping her love around you." Margaret covered her mouth, stunned. "Oh my God, that sweater was hers. I hold it every night." Theresa smiled gently. "She says you don't need to hold on to the pain to keep her close. She's always with you." Margaret sobbed, nodding. "And your brother, Theresa continued, "He's laughing. He says you still haven't fixed the dent in your car from that little accident last year. He says, come on, sis, you know I tease you about that forever." Margaret let out a surprised laugh, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "That's exactly what he would say. He was always teasing me." Theresa nodded. "They want you to find joy again. They want you to live, to smile, to know that they are at peace. And most importantly, they don't want you to feel guilty for moving forward." Margaret took a deep breath, feeling a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in months. "Thank you," she whispered. Theresa reached out and squeezed Margaret's hand. "You are so loved, sweetheart. Never forget that." As the session ended, Margaret stepped outside, looking up at the sky. For the first time in a long time, she felt light. She felt peace, and she knew, without a doubt, that her mother and brother were still with her, just in a different way. However, Theresa Caputo sat in her quiet living room, sipping her morning coffee. The house, once filled with laughter, now held only echoes of the past. She closed her eyes, feeling a familiar presence, a warmth that wasn't from the sunlight streaming through the window. "Mom," Victoria's voice came softly from behind her. Theresa turned to see her daughter standing there, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "You feel it too, don't you?" Theresa whispered. Victoria nodded. "Grandma, she's here, isn't she?" Theresa placed a hand over her heart. She never really left. Ever since Veronica, Theresa's mother, passed, Theresa had felt her presence in ways she couldn't explain. A sudden scent of her perfume in an empty room, the flicker of lights when she was deep in thought, or the comforting warmth in moments of sorrow. Victoria sat beside her, taking her mother's hand. "I've been dreaming about her a lot. She tells me to be strong, to take care of my babies." Theresa smiled. "That sounds like her. She always knew how to guide us." As a medium, Theresa had connected countless people with their loved ones, but nothing could compare to the connection she felt with her own mother. She remembered the way her mother would brush her hair when she was little, the way she would hum old psalms while cooking, and the way she always said, "No matter where I go, I'll always carry you in my heart." Victoria wiped a tear away. "Do you think she's proud of us?" Theresa squeezed her daughter's hand. "I know she is, because we carry her in our hearts, just like she carried us in hers." Just then, the lights flickered gently, as if someone was answering them. And in that moment, Theresa and Victoria knew, love never truly fades. Fear gripped her heart. "Get away from him," Theresa shouted, stepping forward to shield her grandson. The spirit hissed, its form shifting and becoming more menacing. "I will take him with me," the spirit growled. In that moment, Theresa realized that the spirit's anger wasn't just directed at her. It had a personal vendetta against her bloodline. It was trying to tear her family apart. But Theresa wasn't about to let that happen. Drawing upon every ounce of strength and spiritual power she had, she confronted the spirit head-on. "You will not hurt my family," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "I will protect them, no matter what." The spirit let out an ear-piercing scream, a cry of frustration as it began to dissipate. Theresa pressed on, calling upon the light, the love, and the protective spirits that had always stood by her. Slowly, the malevolent energy faded, the whispers quieting, the chill lifting. But even as the room returned to normal, Theresa knew that this was not the end. The spirit had been driven away, for now, but she could feel its lingering presence, as though it were waiting for the right moment to return. Theresa made a silent promise to herself. She would not let it harm her family, no matter what it took. The night ended with her family safely gathered around her, but Theresa knew she would need to be vigilant. The spirit's hunger for vengeance had only just begun, and it would take everything in her power to protect the ones she loved. Theresa Caputo had always been a medium, but now she was a protector, and she would fight with every fiber of her being to keep her family safe from the spirits who walked in the dark. However, Jessica sat anxiously in the dimly lit studio, her hands clasped tightly together. She had spent months debating whether she should come. Could Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium, truly connect her with her brother Daniel? He had passed away suddenly 2 years ago, and the pain of losing him still felt as fresh as the day it happened. Theresa entered the room, her signature blonde hair styled to perfection. She offered Jessica a warm smile before closing her eyes. A deep breath later, she opened them and tilted her head. "Okay, honey, I gotta tell you, there's a strong energy here. A young man, gone too soon." She paused. "He says he's your brother, Daniel?" Jessica gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "Yes, that's him." Theresa smiled. "He's got a big personality, doesn't he? He's making me feel like he was always the life of the party." Jessica chuckled through her tears. That was Daniel, always making everyone laugh. Theresa's expression turned serious. "He's saying something about a necklace. Do you have his necklace?" Jessica's heart pounded. She reached inside her sweater and pulled out a silver chain. "This was his. I wear it every day." Theresa nodded. "He knows. He says, 'Jess, stop feeling guilty. It wasn't your fault.'" Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. The night Daniel died, he had called her, asking for a ride home from a party. She had been exhausted and told him to take a cab instead. The accident happened minutes later. "I should have gone to get him," she whispered. Theresa shook her head. "He won't have it. He says, 'You couldn't have known. And if you had picked me up, I wouldn't have wanted you to carry this weight. I need you to be happy, Jess.'" Jessica sobbed, the burden of guilt slowly lifting. "Tell him I love him." Theresa smiled. "Oh, honey, you don't have to. He already knows." The air in the room felt lighter, as if Daniel's spirit had wrapped her in a warm embrace before fading into the beyond. For the first time in 2 years, Jessica felt peace. However, it was a crisp autumn afternoon when Susan Lucci, the legendary soap opera actress, decided to visit renowned medium Theresa Caputo for a private reading. She had always been skeptical about the spirit world, but found herself drawn to Theresa's gift. Deep down, she carried an unspoken longing to hear from her beloved grandmother, whom she had lost decades ago. As Susan entered Theresa's cozy reading room, she was greeted by the familiar sight of angel figurines, candles, and a comforting warmth that seemed to embrace her. Theresa, with her signature blonde hair and vibrant energy, welcomed Susan with a knowing smile. "Okay, Susan, I gotta tell ya, your energy is strong today," Theresa said, adjusting her bracelets. "And there's an older woman standing right behind you. She's small but feisty, and she's waving a wooden spoon at me." Susan gasped. "My grandmother. She always used to cook with a wooden spoon. She would chase me around the kitchen with it when I tried to sneak a taste of the sauce." Theresa chuckled. "Yup, that's her. And she's telling me she's so proud of you. She says you never let anything stop you, not even the toughest time." "That's my Susie, always fighting like a champ." Tears welled up in Susan's eyes. "She was my rock. I wish she could have seen all that I accomplished." Theresa nodded. "Oh, honey, she did see it. She says she was there at every big moment, your Emmy win, your Broadway debut, even the times you doubted yourself. And wait, she's showing me a necklace. Do you have something of hers?" Susan reached for the pendant she always wore, a delicate gold locket that had belonged to her grandmother. "This was hers. I never take it off." Theresa smiled. "She says that whenever you hold it, she's right there with you. And she wants you to know she's still cooking up a storm in heaven, keeping an eye on the whole family." A warm sense of peace washed over Susan. She had come seeking a sign, and she had found so much more. As she left Theresa's home, she clutched her necklace a little tighter, knowing her grandmother's love would always be with her. And for the first time in years, Susan could almost smell the familiar aroma of her grandmother's famous Sunday sauce filling the air. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.